Hello? Oh, I need to change my bitrate. I have more bandwidth now. Okay. Hello. Okay, I got permission to show this channel on the stream. This is the semi-private one. So, he was teaching Objectivism to a friend, and he spent a lot of time on it, and the guy was doing it for bad reason. Didn't work out. And he's wondering if he should cut off the friendship, which it depends like why he wants to be friends with that person, what are his alternative friendships, what does he want from a friend, like what sort of friend is better than no friend, what activities does he do with friends, etc. And then he says he's frustrated it wasn't the answer he expected. So I wasn't clear on what answer he expected. So that's my question right now, is what answer was he expecting? I said it's hard to tell who's good, and it's good to teach in a one-to-many way because it's a lot lower risk, because if you make teaching material that can help thousands of people, potentially, and you put it on the internet, then if a particular person doesn't work out, it doesn't matter that much. You still have it for whoever comes along who seems worthwhile, and you can reuse stuff. That's what I do a lot. Like, I put a lot of stuff on websites, or at least on discussion forums with public archives, and then in later discussions, me and other people will go back and link previous discussions and say, you can go read about this here. You guys can hear me, right? Okay. It's not the frustrated that I was worried about. It was just I don't know what answer you expected. So I was unclear on that. Share this link. Oh, okay. I have a lot of experience with people starting to learn philosophy and then they quit or they reveal some hostility or dishonesty or something and it doesn't work out. There's also the people who they keep saying they're interested but they never do much, and that can go on for a very long time. Like they don't become hostile, nothing in particular goes wrong, there's no disasters, they just never do much. Um it's sad, it's a difficult problem. It's an important part of the world situation that that kind of thing is common. This document is some of the people who posted to FI and then quit. Um, Alan compiled it recently. I'm just scrolling through it to show there's a bunch of stuff. This is not even close to complete. It's just a few people that were reasonably easy to find by looking through emails from the last few years. When I first read Fabric and joined the TCS list, it had approximately 1,000 members, and that wasn't a steady 1,000, it would go up and then down. Like there were people joining and leaving. There was turnover, so it increases the number of people who showed up and then left. The number who actually, wrote very many posts and then quit is a lot lower. Although uh, there were a lot of lurkers who told themselves they were involved, they cared, they were smart, they understood it, etc., and then quit. So even if they didn't post, it can be kind of a similar thing. The hardest for me was when DD quit. Um, that's like probably worse than everyone else combined because I was very used to having an intelligent discussion partner for everything on short notice who could give me critical feedback and actually point out my errors. And then after he quit, there was no one on my level basically. In general, I don't think I could have helped it. Like, I've put a lot of effort into this problem. Like, I've tried, to be helpful to people, to figure out what goes wrong, etc. So I've made a serious effort. So I basically blame them. I think that I did more than my share. Like, I think I did more than a neutral level of helping people or making education accessible or whatever else. So if they're still feeling, I'm not going to take the blame. Like, I think I was a positive force rather than a negative force. With a lot of them, I find that they're quite dishonest, and like it often turns out they were like hostile months ago and they were hiding it, and they were dishonestly pretending they weren't hostile when they were. That kind of thing is really common. I've gotten better at noticing it earlier. Sometimes I tell people they're hostile and then they deny it. Um, like my ability to detect that someone is hostile is frequently better than their own introspection. Like they won't even admit to themselves they're hostile when I can clearly see it. I quit school. I totally sympathize with quitting school, depending on the situation. I'm not a big fan of school in general. But I wanted to quit school to some extent since approximately 6th or 7th grade. Once I was in high school, I was pretty sure I was going to learn very little for the rest of school. And um but I actually like fully quit after I had DD to talk to, because talking with DD was far better than classes. He was, far better than any of the professors, and I had a huge amount of individual attention. And there were, online discussion forums and stuff like that, which just outcompeted school. But yeah, some people quit school because they're not ambitious or they give up on learning and thinking, and that's really sad. And it's sad that school like gives learning and thinking a bad name. It's similar to how grammar school alienates people from math. A lot of people think they're not math people and they hate math. And that's because school, its ability to teach them math was like negative. It made things worse than if they'd never even tried to learn math in a lot of ways. Kyle, about introspecting, you should go to my podcast because I talked about that recently. So, introspecting about goals is relevant, and then the weekly journaling one is also relevant as a follow up. Yeah, Kyle, one of the things I think helps people is if they do some sort of timekeeping to see how they spend their time. So that's what the weekly journaling one is advocating. I talked about more detailed timekeeping in the first one, but maybe if that's too hard for people, just doing once a week, write down roughly how many hours you spent on what during the previous week is an easier way to do it. while still having most of the benefit. Because a lot of people, like, they don't have good control over what they do with their time, what they do with their life. And just measuring it, observing it, recording the data is a really good way to start figuring things out. A lot of people don't do that because they're too judgmental. They pressure themselves. Like the moment they see they're doing a certain activity, they think that it's bad or something. They think like spending time on Facebook is bad. So if they start keeping track of how much time they spend on Facebook, they feel bad and they feel guilty. So it's really important to look at what you do with an open mind. If you spend time on something, assume there's a reason you do it. Like there's something that's good about it. You can't just throw it away and expect that to work well. You have to try to figure out like what role it plays in your life and consider whether it should be changed with an open mind. Like don't assume from the outset that it's bad. You have to actually like consider it and consider the arguments for both sides rather than thinking you already know the answer. And then if you do decide to make a change, don't do it right away. Like keep track of what you do for a while, then ponder it for a while, and then make changes later. It talks about this, some of this a bit in the book called The Easy Way to Quit Smoking. My friend used this book to quit smoking and found that some of the advice in it applied to a lot of stuff other than smoking. Like it talked about smoking a cigarette and trying not to be judgmental and not feel guilty and try to pay attention to what it's like and whether you're enjoying it and whether you like the taste. Like just sort of honestly trying to understand what's going on and pay attention to it. And to separate that from actually trying to quit. Like there's an information gathering stage and then later you decide what to do about it. Sometimes if people just understand what's going on better, they actually change their preferences. Like if you try to quit without understanding it very well, it can feel like a sacrifice, you can be conflicted. But if you actually understand it well enough, you might see for yourself that there isn't much value there or you don't actually like it as much as you thought, and then it might no longer be hard to quit, which is why it's called the easy way. Another thing to do is you can just search email groups for stuff about introspecting. Also my website, you go like site curi.us introspection. So you got like a blog post called You're a Complex Software Project, Introspection is Auditing. If you know any programming, that might be a good one. But even if you don't, it may or may not be understandable. I don't remember it too well. Figuring out what you want from a discussion. Anyway, so you can search the website that way. And you can search for emails. So like there was a thread called Very Fake Introspection from April 2019, and there was a bunch of discussion there. There's how people got socially conditioned, and introspection got mentioned. This has an introspection tag, which means like the person who started the thread was doing introspection, like they were sharing their introspection. There's a thread called Introspection about Emotions. Oh, that reminds me. This essay is very relevant to introspection. It's specifically related to emotions and how to understand and change those more. So it says some similar things to what I was saying earlier, but it also has some other stuff, and it's pretty short. One of the other worst people who quit is Lulie. She is a personal friend of David Deutsch, and I taught her a lot of philosophy for a couple of years, and spent a lot of time discussing with her. And too much of it was private. That was a error. And what's really fucked up about this case? So most people, when they quit, they disengage from philosophy. Like they're not involved anymore. Um, so they're not doing any harm. There are certain people who like quit and then they keep writing about philosophy and giving people bad advice or sharing bad ideas or lying about how open-minded they are, how open to criticism and discussion and so on. Some people do that kind of thing. And Lulie is one of the worst. She has had a lot of interaction with David and I, so she knows to some extent how to sound a little like us and knows bits and pieces of our ideas. And she has actually plagiarized me and used some of my ideas without credit in order to sound clever and impress people. And she does a Twitter stream where she presents herself as a Popperian who knows a lot of critical rationalism and stuff. And most of what she writes on her Twitter nowadays is actually undermining fallible ideas and basically trying to destroy the community that she quit. She's indirectly sniping at it. I think she also tells people privately to stay away from me. There have been several people who I had some contact with, like on Twitter, and they like follow her or interact with her on Twitter, and they like abruptly just started ignoring me and wouldn't explain why, or just refused to engage with me in the first place, even though they were interested in Popper. And I write, a lot about Popper, and you would think they would have some interest or something. Based on my experiences with people I find elsewhere that have nothing to do with Lulie, the rate of if they like Popper, they'll have some initial interest in FI stuff is like really high. And then with the ones who have interacted with Lulie, it's much lower. So I think there's something really fucked up there. So that is one of the other things you have to be careful about with teaching people ideas is they can actually use those ideas for negative purposes rather than merely quitting and doing something else. So that can be like worse than quitting. David Deutsch has done this in a very mild way. Like he's shifted left in his politics. So he like tweets out some bad things occasionally. But it's not too bad. He's not like actively really doing much. There's like he does occasional things that are kind of gross. Like he's tweeted a couple anti-child things, and he was a founder of taking children seriously. So it's sad to see that kind of change where he's betraying some of his former values. Like I think that today I'm a better representative of his books than he is, um, which is sad. But he's mostly just sort of like retired and not doing much. And of course one can say that he's done enough, as Rand said about Mises when Mises made a few mistakes. Leave him alone. He's done enough. He did a lot of good work. I kind of feel that way about David, but not at all about Lulie, who doesn't really have accomplishments, but has been doing some destructive things. Regarding this, my experience with people who think they know a philosophy extremely well is that it's extremely rare that they actually do. Um, and the best way to check is if they've written stuff like books or blog posts. And if they don't have any writing or videos or other content creation, then in general I'm really skeptical. I think it's important to find ways to test one's knowledge, like not just be confident based on your own judgment, but try to find some other way to judge what you're doing, some way to check your work, like asking experts or looking up answers, depending on what kind of thing it is. Like the kind of metrics you can use that involve less judgment calls vary by what kind of material it is. With objectivism, besides like seeing what experts think or comparing some of your work to like published work, you can talk with non-experts and you can see like how they react to what you're saying about objectivism, whether they seem to know things you don't sometimes, whether they find what you say enlightening. I think it's usually good to have some concrete accomplishments before making arrogant statements. Like, I'm not really against arrogance, and it can be good, and I am arrogant in some ways, or if not arrogant, like something in the same ballpark. If you think that word is like a negative word, then you could replace it with something similar that doesn't have to be bad. But I think it's fairly important to have some concrete accomplishments to back that up rather than it just sort of being an opinion. I don't know why my blog feeds are not working at the moment, at least on this computer. It's not that important though. So I've been really busy, so I am way behind on emails. I was gonna start catching up on some of those. Spreading good ideas is good, but it's important to like do a lot. I find people don't do enough to check how good their ideas really are before trying to spread them. This comes up a lot with politics. Like people volunteer for political campaigns or otherwise try to get involved in promoting certain political ideas or candidates. And they're really quite ignorant of like which candidates or political policies are actually the best. That kind of thing is really common. And I'm sure you know more than like the typical person doing that, but my guess would be you should do more to check your knowledge. For example, if you think you have good ideas about objectivism, well, I'm not saying become a professional philosopher necessarily, but, well, it depends. So the thing about philosophy right now is if you're good at philosophy, you are world class, like better than most professionals. There isn't really like a good amateur level because there's so few philosophers who are actually good. And a lot of the material is so bad that it takes like quite a bit of work to sort through it and like find actual good ideas and understand them. There's a big gap between like the default ideas in our culture that people pick up in childhood and then actual good philosophy ideas. There isn't like a shortcut to get that really fast. I know you're trying to. I was just speaking generally. So what I was gonna say is I think that generally the best thing to do if you think you have a good idea about objectivism you want to share with people is write it down or make a video. I prefer writing, but videos can work. And post it to the Fallible Ideas discussion group and ask for criticism. You can just post a link if you want, and you can post it other places too. It doesn't have to be exclusive. It's just like include us and ask if people have criticism or if they think it's, good, helpful material, and see what people say. The group is at Fallible Ideas site and click on discussion. And then there's the email group and the curi.us website forum and the Discord. In the email one is the most serious one, and then the blog one is medium, and then the Discord one is much less, for like how much attention people are paying to it or how hard they try. Potential is an extremely tricky thing to gauge in general, because in some sense everyone has infinite potential. Everyone's mind is capable of learning anything that can be learned. It's universal. There's some like theoretically possible way that does not violate the laws of physics, does not require like brain surgery or attaching a computer to your brain or whatever, that people could get like unstuck and become wise. I find a lot of people are they have a lot of like commitments or obligations in life, which take away time from learning to do them better, and things can be a bit out of order, where if you like learn something first, then you could do the activities like faster and more efficiently. It's a really common situation. Like basically if people find philosophy after they finish school, then they have a bunch of life commitments like a job or whatever. It makes it harder in some ways. It's easier in some ways though, because at that point in your life you have more freedom. Like if you live with your parents or you have to please your teachers, like if you're interacting with teachers all the time or parents, it's very hard to be a free thinker without getting punished, without having clashes and conflicts with those people, as I think Kyle has encountered and had difficulties with recently and been talking about. A lot of people, I think, they get so used to being really reliant on other people for the first 20 years of their life that when they get a job and they have more freedom and they live on their own, um, they don't always adjust properly. Like they don't realize that they can just not care what other people think as much as they used to. Like not being second-handed and stuff, in certain ways it's a lot harder when you are still in childhood, and then once you have your own income and your own home, uh, and you don't have to please parents and teachers, it's a lot easier to not be second-handed. And people could do better at it, but they sometimes like don't make the adjustment and just keep going with what they're used to. Like they don't fully take advantage of their new freedom. I think that's really common. They just sort of coast along, and they take it for granted that life is the way that it felt during childhood. But there are really huge advantages to having a lot more independence than that. Like our society, at least in America and certain other countries, once you're an adult and you have income, you can just sort of do what you want all day other than work, and no one will really do anything about it or hurt you or care that much. And you never get deprived of things like, say, buying groceries just because you have unpopular ideas or whatever. Like the people at the grocery store don't know what you think, don't care. They'll just interact with you and treat you like a normal person, even if you have antisocial ideas or something. It's just not a big deal for a lot of services and stuff in adult life, which is nice. Whereas like kids aren't used to that. Like their parents will just punish them by taking away their property instead of treating them with standard ways that people in our society are supposed to be treated. They sort of like get used to not having security of their property and trying to stay in the good graces of other people. And then sometimes they get a girlfriend, they get a wife, and that person puts the social pressure on them, and then they have kids and they want to look like a good parent to the other people, and so there are ways that they can keep the second-handedness going. Interactions with coworkers can be problems too. Like if there's office politics, that's even worse than just trying to fit in and be like reasonably acceptable to your coworkers. It's easier if, for example, you work from home like I do. Besides the philosophy stuff, I do freelance programming from home. So I haven't worked on like a large team for software. I've only worked on small teams, and I've only worked remotely, except for like 3 months I worked in an office and I didn't like it. As far as taking time off work, it really depends on your situation. Like, how much harm would that do to your life? You know, if it's easy to take some time off work, then maybe that'd be a good idea. If it's hard for you, if you would get fired, if you would lose a lot of money that you need, um, maybe you shouldn't do it. Maybe you should do more gradually. I know that multiple FI people have reduced the hours they work. Two people went down from 5 days a week to 3 days a week. One went from 5 to 4. Those are the ones I remember offhand. Another one's been trying to reduce. I think it was from 3 to 2 days a week that they work. They weren't full time. So some people have been doing that, so they'll have more time for learning and other stuff. Some people, it depends on your situation, but like some people, they took some time off work and then they found out, oh, if I'm home more, my kids want to interact with me more. So like they didn't find it freed up a lot of time for reading books, for example, but they spent more time with their kids, so that was probably a good thing. Well, being the owner, it still depends a lot. Like some businesses are trying to get to a certain like situation, and it's like time sensitive. Like they have to out compete other businesses to get established in the market. Like sometimes market share is important. There can be like urgent things in business. Sometimes you have like a big contract that you need to deliver on and like please a client, and you can't slack on that or it will harm future business. So some businesses can like coast and it doesn't matter that much, but some of them like they need to keep growing or otherwise be active. Um, Personally, I don't work a lot of hours on software, and I've given up a huge amount of money because I could have worked at Apple or Google or something like that and made millions of dollars over the years that I didn't make. But I preferred to spend my time in other ways. But a lot of people, if they made that same choice, would not be happy with it. They'd regret it or whatever. So you have to do something you're happy with, not something you think you should do. Don't be rationalistic about it. If you like doing your work right now, if you want to keep doing it, you should keep doing it and just make changes in your free time. Yeah, I try to be more careful and have lower expectations. Like when I first started and I joined it was the TCS group, taking children seriously, and it was sort of a David Deutsch fan club. There were, it wasn't just parenting discussion. There was pauper discussion and other stuff. There were also like other lists, like the Fabric of Reality list and the Autonomy Respecting Relationships list and the TCS Society list, which was for politics. And so there was the forum community as a whole, and there was the IRC chat room. When I first got involved, my expectation was, this is amazing, this is saving the world, this is so important, this is going to grow. Like, no one's going to leave and more people will join. Or, I mean, at least not many people will leave. Like, once people start to get it, they're going to want to stay, they're going to want to be more and more involved. Like, why wouldn't they escalate their involvement and interest and start promoting it and sharing it? And that is not at all what has happened. I have seen others, yeah. I've seen so many people say they're super interested and they're never going to quit and so on and so forth. And maybe you're right. I don't have an opinion, I'm not saying you're wrong. I don't know. I know historically, like, most people aren't so great as they think they are. I hope you are, good luck. I think if someone is pushed away by like mild friction and not being really crazy and enthusiastic with handing out the gold stars and the having confidence in them and whatever else, if they like need that kind of like immediate appreciation and praise or whatever, I think that's like a bad sign about them anyways. So I'm not worried about that. I think that if someone's actually a better kind of person, they should be able to deal with it. I try to avoid things that I think would alienate Howard Rourke or John Galt or someone, but if I think it wouldn't alienate them, then maybe it's okay. I don't care so much if I alienate people who are a lot worse than that. Anyway, so I thought it would grow and that people would spread this better way of parenting. They'd learn it and spread it. And that the people with kids largely like learned a little bit and then never did much. Like they changed their parenting a bit. It was an incremental change. In a lot of cases, I think it made things better, not worse. So like there's something positive there, and you see in the long term over the generations, stuff like that can lead to significant progress. But in the short term, people were not getting super involved. They were not centralizing their life around it or anything like that. Yeah, excitement is good. It is not a long-term motivator, but it's good in the short term. It's fine. Like there's nothing wrong with it, and it has upsides. Like it's nice to like things and to be positive about things and be happy about things and stuff like that. When I get really interested in something, I'll often put off most of the other stuff I'm doing and just focus on it because I like want to do it a bunch while I'm really excited. That's fun, and uh, I've set up my life to have a fair amount of flexibility, so I can focus on things pretty intensively when I feel like it. And I'd say I have a shortage of things to get excited about rather than like too many. Like some people think there's just so much to do in the world and they'll never run out, and they're sort of overwhelmed with all the activities, all the books to read, all the TV to watch, all the movies, etc. But I'm more selective about what I like. I learn things faster. I like finish activities where other people just sort of keep doing the same hobby for their whole life. Um, and so I've actually gone through a lot of the best things and have a hard time finding more things that are comparably great, get excited about. I've also given up on finding a replacement for David. I think that it's plausible to find someone who is like learning a lot, and that can be even better in the long run. But I think finding someone who already knows all that stuff is getting like really implausible. I've looked a lot. which makes it a bit harder to get excited about people. But yeah, I could not name any author or intellectual in the world that I think would be really important for me to have a conversation with that I don't have access to. Like, there's no one who I think that person would be really great, I just can't get access, that I've found. One of the best is George Reisman, who I've talked with a little bit. He's old and wants to finish some of his work because he doesn't know how much time he has left, so he's not available to discuss. He does some good work. So, like, you know, if he was a lot younger and he had time available for discussions, he actually knows a lot of stuff, so that would be really nice. I really like Thomas Szasz, who is actually over 90 when I first contacted him, but he'd already written so much that he wasn't like rushing to finish something during his last years. So he emailed with me a bunch. That wasn't even quite equal though. I told him more criticism of his books than he did of my material. Well, that's partly because, you know, I was reading through all his books while he only read a bit of my material, which is, you know, fair enough. He was over 90. Anyway, he was really impressively rational. He was really good at taking criticism. Um, like it stood out compared to people who are like, because some people like hate it or react badly, and then some people are like okay about it, they're pretty good about it, but he like stood out compared to the good people as being exceptional. And yeah, one thing I can say about him is he didn't quit. Like, he was still writing and intelligent up until he died in his 90s. George Reisman also has not quit. He's in, I think, his early 80s, and he just published a new Kindle pamphlet short book thing the other day. I didn't read it yet. I'm gonna go find it real quick. Wait, shouldn't it be like listed here? How do you see the sort by popularity. Publication date. Here it is. Wait, error, try again? I didn't like that link or something. Try it without all the junk on the end. Anyway, I haven't read this yet, but I'm expecting it to be very good. Um, on my my store, I have this, by the way. Oh, here. So for one of his short books, it was like 100 pages or something. Oh, 116 page book. I went through the entire book, 10 videos, 8 hours, and did commentary and stuff as I read through it. It was really good book on economic stuff and Marxism, socialism. He appreciated that I made it. He gave me permission, like in terms of copyright, to use it in the video. But he did not watch the videos. And when I wrote this article, he did not read it. I asked for his thoughts, and he said he was too busy. I also know certain errors he makes. Like he talks about mental illness stuff in ways that I would not, and I think he's mistaken, and that he ought to understand Szasz's work better about psychiatry and mental illness. That's really common, like among classical liberals who ought to be like fully in favor of freedom and everything. It's really common for them to fuck up the psychiatry stuff and to think that mental illness is a special exception where people can be deprived of rights in ways you normally would not do to people, just because some psychiatrist, some expert authority, says so or says to or whatever. I think they people are too gullible and respect it as like a real medical profession, and so they think it's the same as if a state doctor says you have cancer and that it's actually an objective thing rather than a way of suppressing dissidents. And by the way, as oppressive as psychiatry has been like in the first world, it was blatantly used to suppress dissidents in the USSR, and I would assume in Mao's China as well. Another thing related to my expectations about the world. Well, two things. First of all, I grew up in the Bay Area. It's very lefty. I was left wing when I met David Deutsch. I changed my mind quickly once I started debating with like libertarians about capitalism and stuff. Similarly, like I very quickly changed my mind about environmentalism and Israel. But anyways, the lefty culture has certain things that are not just terrible. They're either good or at least like interesting or something. So like some of the good stuff that I picked up is like not being racist, not being homophobic. Um, I think I took it more seriously than most people do, but there's some good there. I think it's getting like taken too far and in stupid directions lately with the SJWs. But like a much milder version of that, uh, from the past is sort of just being a decent person, I think. But the more relevant thing is there's a sort of idealism or even utopianism, which is risky, but there's something good about like thinking the world can change and improve and sort of expecting people to care about saving the world, making things better, etc. Having some sort of interest in civilization instead of just your personal, parochial, individual life. That kind of attitude leads to people donating to charity a lot, which I think is generally inefficient. Like the reason they do it is they know they're not personally contributing to improving the world in some sort of big way, but they think that that's important. It's something they should do, so they try to outsource it by contributing some money to the people who are doing it, so that they can specialize in whatever their career is, and then the charity workers can specialize in their important thing. That applies more to like say a cancer research charity than a Meals on Wheels, because some charities just do like band-aids for social problems like feeding hungry people, and that's not going to make the world better in a long-term way. So I like that kind of charity a lot less than the type that's trying to make some sort of major improvement, like lasting improvement. Because the people who just like help the poor and unfortunate or whatever, it's like pouring water into a leaky bucket. Whereas if it's like scientific research, that is a good example of the kind of thing that potentially will make things better in the long run. Of course, businesses also are good at making things better in the long run. But I was thinking about like charities. Or environmentalism is one where, like, as bad as they are, it's at least looking at the bigger picture instead of just dealing with only short-term problems. There's something good about that kind of idealism, at least partially. So anyways, I grew up in that kind of culture, and so that contributed to when I found TCS, I'm like, oh, right, so this is like, an even better cause. Like, I came from a culture where people like actually care somewhat about causes, or at least say they do, and I believed them. And I found a really good cause, and I thought the people involved would like care about causes. I appreciate that. What should I call you? Like, is B a good name? Because like B Rytharius is a bit long. Anyways, I appreciate it. I do not have confidence in it, but I'm not I'm not like skeptical. I don't have a strong opinion one way or another about how you'll turn out. Alex? Okay. Not that. But where's the thing where I can like write a note on someone? I don't know. I wanted to put your name as a note. I swear I remember that feature. Oh well. Right, so I thought I found TCS and I thought like, oh, here's a good cause. Like it's an even more important cause than the other ones because like parenting is so fundamentally important. Like when parents act badly, they like fuck up the next generation, then fuck up the next generation, and so on forever. Like fixing the cycle of fucking up the next generation is one of the most important causes there is. It's like a root cause of so many other things. If parents would act better, it would solve a lot of other problems. If not immediately, at least after a few generations. Like the reason it's so hard to find rational people to have discussions online is because parenting is so universally destructive to people's rationality. Like that's the number one cause. And like you can blame schools. There's more material that blames schools and talks about how bad school is in existence. Like that's a more common theme you see. And like they're not wrong exactly, but if parents were better, they would homeschool or at least only send their kids to a school that was actually not terrible, which I don't know if there actually are any, but they would actually like check out what the school is like, not just send their kids there and assume school is okay. Like I don't think the parents can punt on responsibility for sending their kids to a bad school. I think that's inexcusable. It does vary by country somewhat. Like I think in Germany, homeschooling is very suppressed. But in like the US and Canada and the UK and various countries like that, you can definitely homeschool. Not have to force your kids to put up with bad teachers. Like if the parent is actually a lot better than the teachers, they can do better. They're not forced to use schools as daycare or whatever. Like, oh god, that reminds me of something my friend said the other day. So some people know that it is hard to find good cleaners to come and clean your home regularly. Like a lot of cleaners are incompetent, and you could say the same thing about a lot of other industries. Um, like if sometimes when people like find a cleaner they like or whatever, they hang on to them and keep using them for a long time. They're like, I finally found a good one. This is great. Um, like it's sort of well known that in most professions, a lot of people are not very good at their job. They're not very responsible. They don't really know what they're doing. Like there's a lot of problems. So if you keep that in mind, and then you think about teachers and whether you really if you can't find someone to like clean your house for you, how are you going to find someone to parent your kid for you? Because that's what teaching is. You're outsourcing a significant chunk of parenting to the other person, and they're in like a hard situation where they're dealing with like 25 kids at once, and they have a bunch of pressures to like teach to the test and like follow the curriculum and stuff. They don't even have full control over customizing it to the kids, even if they wanted to, even if they could, despite there being so many kids. And on top of that, like most teachers are not the best people in the job market. Yeah, I played Hearthstone back in beta and early after the beta ended, and in a lot of the early small tournaments, I had the best results in the world. And I was practicing with some players who were successful in large tournaments later, like Strife Crow and some others. So yeah, I was very good at Hearthstone. I played it for approximately 3 months. I like speedrunning. I've done a couple speedruns. I routed and speedran Infinity Blade, which is a sword fighting game for iOS, and Exile, which is an extremely old RPG game. And there's a speedrun of each of those on my YouTube. And I learned a little bit of Mario 64 speedrunning, and I have been convincing people to try to speedrun as a way of making philosophical progress. Because one of the common problems people have is, well, it's common among the people I actually talk to over time, is that they didn't quit, they want to make progress, but they're not sure how, they're having a hard time. A lot of what they do doesn't seem to work very well. And they're not super involved, they're not quite sure how to make things work. So, some of the solutions for that I've been working on. One is I've been suggesting they do speedrunning, and in particular, I've recommended Mario Odyssey. And because I think learning a speedrun is a lot easier than learning philosophy, but it's also a significant step in actually getting good at something, learning to be precise, learning to adjust what you're doing, like correct your own errors. And it has a lot of advantages. Like the timer tells you how good you're doing, so you got very good feedback on how well you're doing. Whereas like when people write a philosophy post, they're like, I'm not sure if that was good. Like they don't know how to tell if they were successful or not. With a speed run, you can easily measure how successful you were. And it also has things like quick retries. Like if you screw up and die, you can just start over and try again, like really fast. You respond quickly. So it's like efficient. It's time efficient for practicing. You can also pause. You can play in like 5 or 10 minute chunks for practicing stuff. It's fairly easy to learn like one thing at a time. Like you can focus on learning one specific trick or one little part of the game. You can break the game up into smaller parts. Gently. And the speedrunning community in general has a lot of smart people who are actually getting good at things. Like whatever they're doing to learn speedrunning, it seems to mostly work pretty well, at least for some of them. Like they actually get better at it and like rapidly become very good players. Like most Overwatch players never get good, but the people who do like Mario 64 speedrunning and actually keep doing it over time, like a significant proportion of them actually end up quite good at the game. So there's something like impressive about that. So this is one of the things I've been telling people to do, and there are a bunch of comments, and in particular, Gist has been documenting his progress and working on it a lot. Some of the other things I've recommended to people are learning to code, which is a bit of a big project. Like even speedrunning Mario Odyssey is like a bigger project than most people want to do. They're like, I just want to learn philosophy. I'll just pick a book. I'll read it. I'll learn philosophy. Like, they don't want to do like side projects or side quests. Like Mario Odyssey, they're like, that's not philosophy. That's not what I was interested in. They don't want to do it mostly. But some of the long-term people on FI are actually willing to do like long-term things to try to make progress. But an even larger project is learning to code. I have not yet gotten anyone to do that as a way to become a better thinker. But what I have done, which has been getting a lot of discussion lately, and when I go through these emails, you'll see most of the emails on FI lately are about grammar. And I wrote this grammar essay, and I think this article is extremely good from an educational perspective. I think it's good from a grammar perspective too, but I tried to like really break it down into simple steps and explain it in a way where people would actually understand it and actually be able to like learn a skill and do it. A lot of what I write, it's like too abstract and hard for people, and like a lot of what I write is like more for my benefit than theirs. And it's like, okay, I'm gonna write this philosophy that I'm interested in, and then you can read it too. Like, I'll share it. But for this, I like really focused on advice on how to learn to code. I have not written a lot about that. The fundamental like best way in the long term is with the book called Structure and Implementation of Computer Programs. If you search for this book, you can find the book is free online, and you can get free lectures online from the authors of the book who were at MIT. And I think you can also get lectures from Brian Harvey, who was at UC Berkeley, and who I learned the book from. And I thought he was really good. But I don't know if the MIT people are better or not. Anyway, this book is hard. If you find it too hard, Brian Harvey wrote a different book called Simply Scheme, which is meant to be an introduction to it's an introduction to SICP. It's sort of like the first 2 chapters of SICP, but as a whole book. So it's like a longer, slower way to get started. Anyway, so if someone wants to actually understand programming, like conceptually, I believe SICP is the best option that I know of, as opposed to if you just want to like make an app quickly, you can jump into using like Swift or Ruby or something, JavaScript, and like more directly like work towards your end product. But if you actually want to understand what you're doing, this is more about fundamentals. There's also programming is one of the fields with the most overlap with epistemology. A lot of what programmers do is organizing. Here, I'll just link the other one. This is the main book. A lot of what programmers do is organizing knowledge. Like for small programs, a lot of what they do is figure out, how do I make this program work? How do I accomplish the goal? But for larger, complicated programs, especially when you have like a company and there's like many different programmers working on the same project, big software projects are usually more about how to organize all the different code and keep everything organized and working together well instead of becoming a mess than they are about how do I implement any specific feature. Like each of the individual parts are not that hard, usually, or at least most of them aren't that hard, but keeping everything organized is a really big deal. Anyway, so the other option that I came up with for a way people can get started, there's like basic math and logic stuff is another one, which I haven't really done a lot with. But learning grammar, I thought is reasonably objective. Like there's fairly clear right and wrong answers in a lot of cases, not all cases. And it's like simple and concrete enough, and it's useful. Like it's an underlying skill for philosophy because you like read and write. And it's also on its own an example of where you can like learn something. You can learn to be more precise in your thinking and like learn to get details right. And learn to take something that you used to understand in an intuitive way, like when you read, you would intuitively know what something meant, and then you can actually see how to break it down into in detail how it actually works. I also think I found some ways to explain grammar in a simpler, better way than it normally is, so that helps too. By the way, Leonard Peikoff has lectures on grammar, and they are actually pretty good. I like them. They're more normal than mine, though. They are more like, here's a list of things in grammar. We're just going to go over all the grammar things, and then you'll learn them. So it's more in the direction of like rote learning or memorization. Whereas I tried to make it more in the direction of learning a smaller number of core concepts. And I also tried to explain, in some cases, why things work the way they do more. Because I think that's a better way to understand things. And when I was doing like the research and I wanted to understand grammar better myself, like those were the kinds of things I was trying to figure out. And I found most material was not very helpful with that. So to some extent, I just had to figure it out myself and piece it together from like little hints here and there. So, a fair amount of fallible ideas people do not really want to play video games. Some are open to it, but some don't want to do it. And so the grammar thing is more popular currently. People have been working on that, and there has been some very clear progress. Like people have been getting better at it, so I think that's good. Oh yeah, and I do play Smash Brothers. I haven't played for, I don't know, a year. I main Marth. I'm not great, but I've practiced tech skill and I know a fair amount about it, and I watch it some. The game I've been playing the most recently is Overwatch. I main Anna. Gaming has been really important for my life. I started playing chess at age 4 or 5, and I played competitive chess and won like 50 trophies in scholastic tournaments during school. And there's a lot of different levels to chess. Like I learned a lot, I got good, but not like at the top level. Um, I got high enough to have an understanding of what it takes to be a grandmaster, and I decided I didn't want to do it. But I had friends who were grandmasters. I've played a little bit of Go. Chess skill transfers over a decent amount. So like without really trying, I was like 10Q rating, something like that. My grandmaster friend was like 1 dawn or something without playing Go very much, just from mostly skill transfer. I also played a lot of chess variants like Bug House and Wild 5 in particular. So I have a lot of history with looking at the world in an analytic way appropriate to like optimizing gameplay strategies. I've found that useful. I was not talking about Path of Exile, by the way. I have played Path of Exile. I played like a totem spark mage person. In hardcore, I played like my first character hardcore, and I got to like the end game without dying, which was cool. Because the spark totem things are, you don't have to like face tank stuff, so if you don't know which enemies are how dangerous, you can keep your distance at least. Anyways, my speedrun though was a different game called Exile Escape from the Pit. This was a shareware game from like the early 90s. So you have a bunch of different spells, and there's a nice skill system where you can learn different skills, and it definitely has some good traits. I dislike the games like Final Fantasy with the menu-based combat. I think it's like too simplistic. Whereas this has more like Final Fantasy Tactics, I think it's called, or like Fire Emblem or something, where during combat you can like spread your characters out on individual squares and everyone gets positioned somewhere, and then you can like aim area of effect spells. So I like that a lot more than just the menu-based combat of some RPGs like Chrono Trigger. Yeah, I liked these games a lot. I played them like back when they were newer. So yeah, I beat Exile 1 in under an hour. It is if you know anything about it, it is a huge fucking game. Like on your first playthrough, you could easily spend like 50 plus hours to beat the game. If I was learning philosophy today, I would use the fallible ideas discussion community stuff and discuss with people a lot. Very similar to what I did do when I was new. Um, like the fallible ideas list is the successor of the various David Deutsch related forums. And there was the IRC room, and now we have a Discord chat room. Um, One of the interesting things about this game for a speedrun is there's like no breaks. There are no cutscenes, and on top of that, if you just hold down a direction on your numpad, the game will play extremely fast. Like you can just run across like huge areas like almost instantly. There's no like walking delay. And in combat you can tell it to only have your main fighter be active and have everyone else inactive, and then you can just hold the buttons into the enemies and it'll play through combat extremely quickly. No, zero sequence breaks, zero like glitches in the normal sense, but there are some extreme balance issues. If you stack a bunch of Bless and Haste on one fighter, he can basically kill everything by himself and no one else ever does any damage in the speedrun. It's 5 spellcasters and 1 fighter, and the fighter kills everything by himself with a bunch of bless spells, and I do not use direct damage spells ever. They're like worthless compared to blessing a fighter. Another thing about this game is if you have sounds on, then when you attack stuff, it like plays a sound and it waits for the sound to play. So you have to mute sounds, and then you can do combat like seriously 10 times faster. Another cool thing about this game is that it has 3 different endings. So this speedrun is only to do one ending. They're all separate endings, like you can individually do any of the endings. But you can also keep playing and do the other ones. Except one of them is like the end. But you can do the other 2 in any order and then finish the last one. Anyways, for the speedrun, I just started with any percent. I picked the one I thought was fastest. I'm reasonably confident it's fastest, but I didn't actually route out and run the other endings. Yeah, this does not have a lot of technical maneuvers, like you're holding your numpad to like run your character into stuff with melee attacks a lot, and you're trying to cast spells quickly with hotkeys and navigate the map. So like mechanic wise, it's not that hard of a game. I was interested in it from like a strategy perspective of like how to play efficiently. Like what I ended up finding out is you can skip almost everything and basically just follow the main quest and be extremely low level and win anyways. The fight at the end is very hard, but you leave all of your spellcasters outside of the room with the fight, and you cast an invulnerability spell on your fighter, and you just stack the invulnerability spell, and you bring dozens of mana potions, so you can cast enough invulnerabilities on your fighter for him to be invulnerable for the entire fight, and you give him like 100 minor bless spells and 100 minor haste spells, which stacks them enough that they last for the entire fight. And then he just solos the boss without even having very high damage. And also with that much bless, you like never miss at least. So you can beat the last fight even though you're really low level. One of the other weird things about the game, compared to most games, is that whoever kills a monster gets like 3/4 of the XP, and then the rest is divided among the other characters. So when the fighter kills everything, he ends up like level 25, and everyone else ends up like level 3. In some of the later games, they like nerfed bless and haste and made them stack less. Anyway, when I was researching this game, I actually found the source code because after he made the original trilogy, he made a game called Blades of Exile, which had a level editor, so people could make their own adventures. And at some point, they released the source code for that, so it could be like an open source project. And so the code is very similar because it's the same engine, and the changes between the games weren't that big. So I actually looked at the source code for that game to better understand what some of the spells did and how some stuff worked. Including, in this game, you can split your characters up for combat, and then when you end combat, all of your characters appear on the same square as one of your characters. And I was hoping that you could control that somehow, but it turns out it's just random. Because if you could control that, you could run like one character to the end of a dungeon, and then end combat and have everyone appear there. If you really wanted to optimize the speedrun, you could just do it and hope you got lucky, because you would have a 1 in 6 chance that everyone would appear at the end of the dungeon. And if it doesn't work, you could just reset. But there are certain cases where that could save like a minute or something. It's kind of funny. I'll leave like my whole party at the beginning of the dungeon except for the fighter, and put him in only control him mode, and then run him through the whole dungeon and like kill everything and clear it out. And then I'll end combat and run through the dungeon really quick with my whole party to actually, because there's certain things you can't do in combat mode, like trigger specials. So you often have to like run to the end of the dungeon with your actual party in order to finish what you're doing. But the best way to clear out the dungeon, see, the way the game is intended is you walk into a room, you go into combat mode, you fight the enemies, you end combat mode, you walk into the next room, you see enemies, you enter combat mode, and you fight them, and so on. However, if you just stay in combat mode the whole time and you're hasted, your buffs last way longer because you're moving at higher speed due to haste, and you can run around the dungeon way faster. I've watched a lot of speedruns. I haven't played it as much as I could because I have other things to do with my time, and I think I already like understand it well, so I don't need it as much. And also I'm enjoying Overwatch currently. One of the unfortunate things about this game is the Windows version is missing certain hotkeys. So I think it loses time and it's less fun to play. So I've speedran the Mac version. So you have to get a Mac Classic emulator, which is a hassle to get it set up and working. It is possible. I got it to run on a modern Windows computer. But this speedrun was actually done on a Power Mac G5 running OS 10.4, which still has the old classic compatibility stuff. But the Mac Classic emulators that exist, like Basilisk and Keep Saver and whatever, are not user friendly. They're a hassle to set up and get working well. so that's annoying. And I guess the old Windows version of this game, or maybe even DOS, I don't know, would be much easier to set up, but yeah, missing hotkeys, it's a disadvantage. I remember I tried it and you had to click more stuff with your mouse, and I was like, this sucks. So for one thing, I've played Overwatch on and off over time. I haven't just played constantly. And it's partly that I play with a friend a lot. But I like trying to aim and work on my mechanics because I never played shooters very much before Overwatch. I played like a lot of Warcraft 3, like RTS and MOBA stuff, for example. So shooters were like a really different thing for me. Like I started out really bad with terrible aim and stuff, but I got up to masters, like low masters. And I think that the roll lock is going to be good. I haven't played for a couple of weeks, but the roll lock is coming out soon, where you're required to have 2 tank, 2 healer, 2 DPS. You have to pick which one you want before you queue, which means people are actually going to be playing a hero that they're decent at. Like you only have to learn 2 heroes because there's only one other person who can take a hero from you because there's only one other guy with the same role as you. So if you have 2 heroes, like a main and a backup, you will always get one of them, which is nice. Like people can focus more. A lot of games, like people are trying to fill, like no one wants to play main tank. Um, and then a lot of games are imbalanced because one of the teams has a terrible main tank or something like that. Where you got like 3 healer mains and someone has to play a character they're not good at. So I think the game quality is going to improve. I like the Zelda games, and I've watched a lot of Zelda speedruns, and I like to watch variety speedruns. I like sometimes to watch games that I've never played and like try to understand what they are just from watching them without playing. Like I'll watch games done quick and see a variety of games. And I particularly like games done quick because of the commentary. Like people prepare what they're gonna say and like they explain what they're doing a lot more compared to regular streams. Oh, in Overwatch, if you have flawless aim, I assume the best hero is Widowmaker, not McCree. But yeah, McCree is extremely good if you aim well enough. I started out as a Widow one trick. I played almost entirely Widow for like 100 hours. Then I played a lot of Tracer and then Ana. And Ana is now my most played hero. Widow and Tracer are very hard, and I find if you take breaks and you're not really dedicated to the game, they're like too hard. Whereas if I play support, it's like a bit less hard, which makes it easier to play like somewhat casually. I often play Overwatch like in the evenings when I'm tired and like can't do more intellectual stuff anyways. I enjoyed sniping a lot. When I first started, I was like, I want to be a sniper. That sounds cool. Because like I hadn't played snipers before in like anything really. So I wanted to try it. I think if I was really good, Tracer is more fun than Widowmaker. I think like mobility is more fun than just trying to aim right in general. In general, I like mobility heroes, but I main Ana. I'm trying to position with her. Mobility is more important if you're a DPS hero. I'm not sure. Maybe another hour. I wanted to start catching up on emails. Oh, I'm so behind on Justin videos. I only watched like the first 4. Oh, I need to reply to Justin. He wrote a post about those videos. I was gonna reply. It was about his microphone. Maybe? Oh, here it is. Okay, July 27th, 3. Alright. Playable on a Mac. Um, I assume you can get a N64 emulator and play Mario 64. So Mario 64 would be a good option, I think. You would need to get a controller that can connect to your Mac and an emulator. I played Mario 64 on an emulator on a PC with a controller. It was a Xbox controller, like one that was meant for hooking up to a computer. That worked well. In general, for starting speedrunning, you need to find a game that is reasonably popular. You need to be able to watch people stream it so you can like see what other people do. The times need to be reasonably competitive, so it's like a reasonably optimized game. So there's like good examples to follow. You don't have to make things up yourself. Like other people will figure out what's good. Because like when you're getting started, you want to have other people figure out what's really good, and then you learn it, and then you see how clever they were. And then maybe after you've speedrun several games, you'd be able to do that yourself and be the innovator or pioneer or inventor or whatever for some future game. But like the first few times, you just want to follow what other people are doing to learn how it works. And you need a game with educational resources. So it needs to have like a Discord where you can ask people questions and some guides. Like you want video guides, something like that. So like Mario Odyssey has this series of guides by Small Ant, who is a top runner. And we have a movement guide, and then we have a guide to the first 2 kingdoms, a guide to the next 2 kingdoms, next kingdom, next 2 kingdoms. And these are beginner's guides. These are not the world record route. That's a easier route that's like 10% slower. And it teaches you step by step. So that is a lot easier. He shows you things like not to do, like common errors and stuff. Like he's actually helping you learn it rather than just showing you what to do. So learning from that is a lot easier than just like watching the world record run and trying to copy it. So a lot of games have resources and guides and stuff, but definitely not all of them. It has to be reasonably popular. By the way, if I like forget some sort of chat message, just remind me or like say it again or something. Oh, hi Alex. I was talking about speedrunning a bit. He asked what to run. And I wrote a short reply to Justin, which I will go highlight, I guess. So this is what I wrote. It was just a short email. And anyways, I was saying that if I missed chat messages, um, just say them again. Because like I think I saw them all, but then I talk for a while, so then I might forget some, even if I saw them. Yeah, Mario 64, I think there are Mac emulators that can run it, so that was my first idea. Because it's, Odyssey not available. And I like Mario more than Zelda for beginners because Zelda is very trick heavy. And Zelda has a lot of stuff where if you fail a trick, you get stuck. Whereas Mario, if you fail a trick, you can just go around and do it like more of the intended way. You never really get stuck. You can just do it a slower way and it's not too hard. Oh, another thing with speedrunning is just watch some games done quick. And see if any of the games look good to you. So twice a year, they do like a week straight marathon of a wide variety of different games with commentary. And so you can find games that you think you might be interested in and watch them, or just watch random games and see if any of them catch your interest is another way to do it. All right, there's a specific post focused on the word that I wanted to find, but I have no idea what this is. I'm gonna look for it here where I won't mark everything unread when I look at it. So there's a post by Anne. Oh, here it is. This should be it. Yeah. Okay, July 27 to uh let's see. Yeah, I guess it's a little low maybe. I can turn it up. It's not super close to me. I'll just put it closer. Is that better? I'm turned away from it a bit. I need to get a better mic setup. I didn't change anything from before, though. Everything's loud except me. Like, what everything? What else is there besides me? Like clicking? Alright, let's try this. I pointed the mic more in my direction. Magic is a pretty good game. It is a strategy game. There's a lot of like optimization, like details matter. It's an expensive game with a clunky user interface. It's like awkward to play online. It takes quite a bit of time. One of the things Hearthstone did to streamline things is you can't interrupt stuff on your opponent's turn. That takes away a lot of strategic depth. But it means like you play a turn, then they play a turn, then you play a turn, and there's you don't have to like wait to see if your opponent's gonna respond or not. That goes faster. Yeah, I've tried some rhythm games. I don't play them much at all, really. What I have played that's kind of similar is Duet. It's a timing based game. Anyway, you can just rotate left and right and dodge the blocks. So yeah, it's similar in the sense of timing based, but you don't have to you do mouse accuracy, like the controls are easier. I used to play some Tap Tap Revenge, which is it was an iOS game where you tap on the notes basically. So there'd be like 4 different columns that the notes come down, and you have to tap the right ones with the right timing, and they match the music. Duet, though, I played like a lot and was really good, and it would keep track of how many touches on the screen you did to beat a level. So I maximized all the levels, including doing like unintended tricks to get the fewest possible touches. Including, I found a glitch in the game that enabled you to get lower scores than would otherwise be possible. And I told the developers about it, and I showed it to them on stream, and they did not understand and didn't do anything about it, which was kind of sad, but I've found that's common with developers, is they don't really listen. But anyways, after a lot of testing, what I figured out is if you're holding a direction while you die, your start position is slightly turned. And there's a minimum amount you can turn in this game. Like, the least you can turn is 1 frame worth of turning, and it's a 60 FPS game. So there are certain positions the balls cannot be in, because you can only turn in certain increments. Like, you can't turn a smaller amount than 1 frame worth of turning. However, if you're holding a direction when you died, the offset you would have at the start, where you were slightly turned when the round started, was less than the normal amount you could turn. So you would be able to do tricks where you could like just barely fit through something that the normal turning wouldn't let you get in position for. That was hard to track down. Finding bugs is and like actually testing games for bugs, the ability to like figure out what's going on enough. But I've done I helped with a RPG game. It was a map for Warcraft 3 called the Kingdom of Caleron, and I did a lot of the bug testing and figured out what was going on with some very hard to reproduce bugs. I also did the balancing of the heroes and items and boss damage and stuff like that while someone else was doing the coding. And that kind of thing it's kind of similar to doing debugging as an actual programmer, but kind of different too. Which game are you good at? Osu? Or something else? I don't know what LLDX is, but I've seen Overwatch people streaming Osu, and I tried playing it briefly. I do not see a link. YouTube might be filtering your links or something. Maybe if I make you a moderator, you can post a link. Let's see if that works. YouTube is like stupid with censorship. That reminds me, Justin, you commented on one of his videos and he tried to reply to you twice and his comment didn't show up. He mentioned something about it. And I told him to check the moderation queue. But yeah, YouTube can be dumb about censoring. I don't know. If this doesn't work, we can just use Discord for sending links. Is this you playing or just some random person? Well, that looks hard. Like, I can see that takes skill. Like, I assume a beginner would just completely fail that song. There's a lot of coding stuff. It's up to you. Like, I think that Steam and Lisp are fundamentally the best, like I was talking about earlier. But you can try other stuff. If it works for you, great. There's many, many options. So they're designed for people who have different situations. Like a lot of people don't want to learn abstract stuff, or they like certain things, or don't have a lot of initiative, like they don't have their own motor or it's not fully working or something. And so there are things like courses where people in a group push each other to keep going. Or there's like school where you have a teacher like pressuring you to keep doing it, like giving you homework and telling you what to do. Or there's just there was this was a Ruby teaching guide, and it had like a bunch of comics in it. So some people like comics. This guide is actually good. Like it's just because there's comics doesn't mean it's like, you know, shitty material. It's actually good material plus comics. So that works well for some people. That helps some people. It's if you're having trouble, try a variety of things, look around until they start getting repetitive. Well, until one works, or if you keep switching, just switch quickly if it's not working and try something else until you either find something that works or you find that they're getting repetitive. Like you see themes and you're like, oh, I see how this one is similar to that other one. I already know what I think of this. Um, and then once they start getting repetitive, if you haven't found one you like, you at least have an overview of what your options are. Because now you've seen like most of the common kinds of things available. That'll give you a better perspective to choose what you want to like focus more time on and try to actually make work, if anything. Oh, no videos for 3 years. Are you going to put new videos like about objectivism on this channel, or will it be a different channel? By the way, 230,000 views is a lot. Like, that's more than all my videos on my channel combined, I think. What's funny is, like, the highest views on my channel by far is just a short clip from a leftie stream. But I found it, you can get much higher view counts with gaming than philosophy in general. It's a lot easier. My Infinity Blade guide got like 300,000 views, and it was just on the official forums, and it got stickied. And my Hearthstone guides got like over 1 million total views. Yeah, the left and rap thing. It still gets comments occasionally. Like people just are still finding it, and they'll write comments on it. And absolutely zero of the comments are like intellectual or substantive. They're very repetitive, and there's no real thought put into them. It attracts like a very different audience than all of my other videos. But it was nice to have like a video with a high view count and just see what it was like and get a bunch of comments and just like have that experience. I got the views because I uploaded first because I was watching Leffen's stream with VLC, not in browser. And then I just because I use the live stream software, so you can watch streams in VLC. And then you just literally choose record, and it's super easy to just record the section of a stream you want really fast if you're watching in your own software. So I beat everyone to get it up and then post it on Reddit, so I got all the views. I recently made videos criticizing popular songs, like why the lyrics are bad, like the ideas in the lyrics are bad. I don't know how accessible they are though. Accessible to the mainstream is not a priority for me. Like the reason I wanted to do mainstream songs primarily was because they're like culturally influential, but I wanted to, as a main goal, like help good people understand why mainstream culture was bad, and so they could better stay away from it or not fall for those errors, and they could better understand like what's going on in the world around them. I know I got some attention for my video um, about the Jordan Peterson lecture, or not lecture, it was there were 4 people on stage, and it was at Ocon. And it was Jordan Peterson, Dave Ruman, Aaron Brook, and Ankar Gate. I think that was the 4, but I'm not positive. I got attention for that video a bit, which is I didn't predict that in advance, and I didn't think about it when I was making the video, and the video is actually really inaccessible. I talk about both popper stuff and PUA stuff, pickup artist stuff, that I did not explain it from the beginning. I just talked about it like I normally would to my normal audience who already knows about that stuff, like at least the basics. And then on top of that, I watched the video at 2.5 speed, and so you get me talking at 1 speed and then the video going at 2.5, and it's actually really awkward, even if you're good at watching things fast. That's actually a problem I have, because I could do more commentary videos where I like watch a video and pause it and comment and then unpause and watch more and so on. And it works fine with music, but for like videos of people talking, like lectures, I can't watch it at 1x, I would get too bored. I need to watch it like significantly sped up, which really hurts the accessibility for people. Yeah, public speaking to me is secondary. Um, I started with writing and did almost exclusively writing for call it 10 years when I started learning philosophy. And then I started doing some videos more. And when I first made videos, I screencasted writing emails, and I didn't talk very much. I just wrote emails like normal, and I occasionally talked a little. And after making like 25 videos like that, I, talked more often and got more used to it. And then I've made other videos and stuff, and I talk more now, which is okay. There's some value in it, but writing is my true love. Like, I don't take verbal discussion fully seriously. Like, I think if someone's really serious, they'll write. And that's writing is like the best way for explaining the most important ideas. I view verbal stuff as like supplemental material. Like, it can help flesh things out, it can help explain it more, it can help from an educational perspective. But I think like the core most important material ought to be written if it's actually serious. I view verbal stuff as sort of like optional extras. not like a main event. I know a lot of intellectuals don't seem to see it that way. Like they like giving lectures and being public speakers and having debates where they go to the same place in person and stand on a stage together for a time limit. And that's not at all how I see like a serious debate. Like if you really want to get to the bottom of the issue, you should do it in writing, you should do it asynchronously, you should do it over time. Like why not take a few days to think about your reply? And have the discussion last for a few months and not have time limits. And like the way people deal with debates, it's such a social event because they basically have to make the time even, because it's like whoever talks the most gets the most time to try to impress the audience. It's like a competition to somehow pander to the audience, get their attention, impress them something. And debates should not be like that. Like there's very little interaction in normal stage debates because each person like gets their time where they're talking for like multiple minutes straight. They don't really get to grill each other and actually get clear answers to their questions. And they don't want to use their time to ask the other guy questions because they're trying to use their time to say their points. But like if their goal was actually truth seeking, they would be asking each other more questions and they wouldn't be trying to hog the spotlight. Like the way they want to hog the spotlight shows that what they care about is like audience perceptions, not the discussion with the other guy on the stage. But anyways, if the end goal involves both writing and speaking, it doesn't matter too much which one you start with. Like if some people find speaking more accessible or like an easier way to get started, and then they could branch out to do more writing later, you could go in either order potentially. What I would say to that is contextual. Like, where did I meet this person? Like, if they come to the Fallible Ideas forum and they post on my forum, then they're inviting like a much harsher comment. Whereas like if I'm on their forum, like if they said that on their blog and I'm in blog comments, that would be a bit different. Or if I meet them in person, and we're doing say a sporting event related thing, then that's again a different context, or like a barbecue. And in those kind of situations, like you should be less aggressive. Like they haven't invited harsh criticism or whatever. So it depends a lot on those kind of factors. I think some people don't realize that about me. Like they see a lot of what I do on my forums with people who come to me. And then some of them think, oh, that's how you should act. And then they go do that in like different situations and offend people in person. Or get kicked off forums or something. I mean, I do get kicked off forums, but I try to do it in such a way that I'm like pretty blameless. Like I don't act the same way on the forum. Like I tone it down for their forum and I got banned anyways. There's different ways of toning down. Like there's types of toning down that are dishonest or they're compromising or like, hiding what you think, or there's ways to do it that can be like really bad, but there's also ways where you can just be like less aggressive and like ignore a lot of people's errors in a way that doesn't sanction them and just talk about your own thing. And like you have a lot of choices of what to focus on. Like you can be picky about details and bug someone because they made like detail errors that you think are important, and they often don't like that. You can also just sort of like ignore most of what they said and like talk past them a bit and just kind of talk into the room and like say what you want to say, and then if anyone likes it, cool. And that can be like a less aggressive way to deal with forums where you're the guest. Okay, so like in a vacuum or like on my forum. I think on my forum is what a vacuum means. Like I'm alone, I'm just doing my own thing. So like what would I say, like even if I wasn't even talking to a person, like I just see that text and like the person who wrote it, let's say they're dead, like so it's not about how they react. Just my opinion of that text. Let's see. When they say objectivism may be the best explanation, they are hedging. Like they don't want to deny it and they don't want to accept it. So that's already like a bad sign. Like make up your mind. Like, do you agree with it? Do you disagree with it? Have you not looked into it enough to have an opinion? Are you planning to look into it more to form a proper opinion? Did you just skim it, not really have a proper opinion, and don't care to find out? Like, what's the actual thing going on? So I think this is already bad. Okay, then this now makes it worse. Like, the best explanation now. So what they mean is something like, even if objectivism like is out competing its rivals today, it'll probably get overthrown in the future. Like better ideas will come along and it'll turn out to be trash. I think that's like very unreasonable. Like they're just sort of assuming that it will age poorly. And people do not do that with everything. People do not assume arithmetic would age poorly. They don't say, 2 plus 2 is 4 is the best explanation now, but in the future it might not be. I think that you can, accept that you're fallible and even be open to the possibility that you might conceivably be wrong about 2 plus 2 being 4 in some way or something. Or at least like your understanding of arithmetic being wrong somehow. You can be open to that, but you don't have to hedge about it. Like just being generically fallible does not require hedging. Hedging is what you use when there's like major uncertainty or like there are known issues, like you're unclear on something. Whereas arithmetic is like in a situation where I don't know any flaws, I don't have any doubts, I don't have any like research areas I haven't gotten to yet where I think there might be a flaw. There's just like nothing there, like no problems. It seems to be working great. It's been tested a lot. So I think like a proper evaluation of objectivism is a lot closer to arithmetic than this guy thinks it is. Like there are certainly some areas that are like not fully developed as well as arithmetic, or some areas that you could question more than arithmetic, like with current known questions, not just potential someone might invent a question or criticism in the future. But I think it's much more in the ballpark of arithmetic than this guy's saying. Like it's well developed, it's stood up to a ton of criticism, like it's really been thought through, there's a lot of good content there. I would not just be like generically doubting it and assuming that in the future we'll just throw it away. Like I would more be predicting in the future we'll have a improved, evolved version of it. Like, it will incrementally make it better, we'll refine it, we'll optimize it, sure. But I have no actual like expectation of a major change. It's certainly possible, I can't rule it out. There are no like signs pointing to a major change in the future where we like reject objectivism for something very different. Like the revolutions from classical physics to relativity and quantum physics, like that kind of thing can happen, but we shouldn't go around expecting it or talking like we're assuming it will happen. That objectivism will like turn out to be like classical physics and get surpassed. Okay, so if it's the best explanation now, presumably you should accept it. For now at least. So it's like, why not accept it? Like he's asking why not rather do something else. He's like, maybe it's the best, but why not do something else? And I'm like, if you think it's maybe the best, why not just do it? Like, what's the problem with doing objective? He doesn't say what his objections are. He doesn't say what he doesn't like about it. He doesn't say his criticisms. He doesn't say his problems with it. He doesn't say his doubts. He seems to have some sort of uncertainty or something going on here. And he is not explaining it. He's not telling you what it is. So he's changing the topic to what is this other thing he likes? It is accept a personal truth. Well, at least so far. He does tell you what he doesn't like later. So accept a personal truth. So this is not honest. He's not explaining what he means. He's not defining his terms. He's not using clear words. Like, what is a personal truth? Like, isn't truth, like, objective by definition? Like, is a personal truth John is 5 feet tall? Because it is, like, personalized to John. Whereas, like, Bill is a different height. You know, if you mean that's what a personal truth is, then, you know, that's objective, though. But, like, what other type of personal truth would there be? Like, does he mean a subjective truth? What does subjective mean? Could he actually explain it? Subjective, I've said many times, is the most confused, misunderstood, ambiguous word in the English language. Like, literally the worst word is subjective. And I recently, while doing grammar stuff, had some insight into where that word comes from and the root of the word and like where this problem is coming from. Because in grammar, sentences have a subject and an object. So if you say like, John threw the ball, John is the subject and ball is the object. And the idea of subjective is that it has to do with the subject, that it depends on the subject. The ball is seen as part of the external world, while John, the subject, is seen as like things depend on his personal taste and attributes of the subject. But the attributes of the subject exist in the external objective reality. So there's just a very fundamental confusion there, where people think like, you know, personal taste is subjective, but it's like, no, you know, objectively you experience it a certain way and you have certain ideas about what foods you like and so on. There's like, you exist in objective reality. You're immersed, submerged in objective reality. Like, you can't get away from that. So the whole subjectivism stuff, like personal truth, like what the fuck is that? Is a personal truth that I like pizza? I think pizza tastes good to me, but not everyone else likes pizza. That's not deep. That's not important. That's not really a threat to objectivism or objective truth. Okay, and he doesn't say what personal truth. Like, what personal truth? What does he mean? What he means is arbitrary exceptions. He means whenever I feel like it, on my whim, without verbalizing what I'm changing or why, I'm going to deviate from objectivism and believe something else because in some way, to me personally, it seems good, convenient, or whatever. So he's not going to care about what the truth is. He's just going to accept this crap for some reason. He doesn't want to say what crap or why. Okay, and then what does he not like? Constantly seek criticism of ideas. He doesn't want to think critically. He doesn't want to look for what's wrong with things. He just wants to accept whatever he feels like, whether or not it's wrong, because he doesn't check whether it's wrong. And he wants to reject things that he doesn't like for some reason that he doesn't want to say, without checking whether they're right or wrong, without criticizing them. He wants to hide what he doesn't like about things. So he sort of admits that he doesn't like seeking criticism. He doesn't like criticism, but he doesn't say, you know, what specific parts of objectivism does he not like. Like, this is like a meta issue with objectivism. He's like, objectivists like seek the truth, and I don't like truth seeking. Like, okay, but you know, which more object parts of objectivism do you like? Lower level parts, like, do you dislike capitalism? Do you dislike selfishness? Do you dislike the harmony of interests? Do you dislike independence and not being second-handed? Like, which specific parts are the ones you want to throw out and why? Do you think like Rand's aesthetics were wrong? There's a lot of choices. And okay, shouldn't we pick the best parts of the philosophy that works for me? The idea here is that like different philosophies work for different people. That philosophies are just a bunch of parochial advice that's not really reliable. It's not designed by principle. Like, he doesn't see philosophies as having principles that could apply like universally and be like how the world works, like A is A or whatever. He sees like advice and philosophies as some guy's opinion, which will probably work for some other people, and if it's pretty good, maybe it'll work for a lot of other people, like say 10% of people. It's like if you're similar to Ayn Rand, maybe you can be similar. If you're similar to Ayn Rand, maybe her philosophy will work for you. But if you're not similar to Ayn Rand, then you should find someone else's philosophy. Or if you're similar to Ayn Rand in like a few ways, you could use a few pieces of her philosophy. He sees it kind of like that, I think, rather than seeing like we're building up a system using like logic and principles to figure out what actually makes sense and like try to understand things like what. This is more getting into CR, but I would say things like certain methods of like acting or living, like certain actions are capable of creating knowledge and certain actions are not capable of creating knowledge. Like there's certain things you can do, and at the end of it, you can learn something. And there's other activities you can do, and if you do that, you cannot learn. Like that particular set of actions cannot create knowledge. You cannot learn that way. And that's like a really fundamental distinction, and it's universal. It applies to every single person. It's not about your personal taste. Like even if you think there are personal like learning styles, like I'm a visual learner and he's a tactile learner, and that other guy like likes learning by listening, even if you believe in that stuff, there are still certain ways of learning that don't work for anyone. There are certain things that just can't work, cannot possibly work. It's very similar to in politics, like certain government policies cannot possibly achieve the goals that they're intended to achieve. Like they're counterproductive or ineffective or whatever. And this has nothing to do with like the personalities of the people in charge or the personalities of the society or the culture or anything. It's just, that cannot work. And so he's not acknowledging that philosophy deals with that kind of thing. But and some philosophies maybe don't, but objectivism and critical rationalism certainly do. And some of the mainstream philosophies or old philosophies or whatever try to deal with that kind of thing. Even if they get it wrong, some of them try to deal with it. But like objectivism and critical rationalism try to tell you like what things can possibly work or not, and deal with other like hard facts, like not soft varies by person stuff. Like there is stuff that can vary by person, but there's stuff that doesn't, and it applies to you whether you like it or not, and no matter who you are. And so you should not arbitrarily pick and choose like which laws of physics you will believe in. You should not arbitrarily pick and choose which laws of epistemology you'll believe in, and so on. It's like the same thing. It's the same with moral laws and like laws of logic and laws of math and he doesn't say which are the best parts or why. Like how are you going to know which are the best parts other than truth seeking and criticism? The only way to know which parts are good is try to criticize the parts in question and see which ones get like destroyed by criticism and which ones don't. So this is what Rand calls the stolen concept fallacy, where you're using like premises from a system that you're rejecting. You're borrowing concepts while so they're using the concept of best parts, like which is a concept that is in objectivism or critical rationalism or whatever. But meanwhile, they are attacking and denying the very foundation that makes best parts possible. Best parts only comes from criticizing ideas. Without that, you can't tell what's the best. If you're throwing this out, you lose best parts. You no longer have assets. You have no right to that. It's not yours anymore. You've rejected the system that allows it, the principles that make it possible. You cannot talk about what is a best part anymore. You have no knowledge of that. You don't know anything about it. You've given it up. You've thrown it out when you got rid of criticism. You don't get to talk about it anymore. And then he says that works for me. So that's in addition to the subjectivism or personal truth issue, that is also pragmatism, which is something like try it, and if you seem to like the results, do more of it. And that's very anti-intellectual. Like they think they're being practical, but what they're really doing is just going by intuition. Like they're replacing explicit reasoning where people put things into words like I've just been doing with it looked to me like it worked. I didn't think about it much, but my impression was it worked good, so I'll do more of it. Which is not, it doesn't work. And also it's the objectivism's criticism of pragmatism. Regarding Fountainhead, I don't know. I did a few chapters of Atlas Shrugged. I don't know if you've seen them, but chapters 1, 2, 3, Atlas Shrugged, I did detailed analysis, like really detailed analysis. This is chapter 1. But yeah, I only have 3 chapters of Atlas Shrugged like that. There have been discussions relating to the Fountainhead at various times, so if you go to Fallible Ideas on the website or download the archive, by the way, go to ebooks, and then you can download the archive. If you mean the Atlas Shrugged link, here's chapter 1. Anyway, what I was going to do is you just go to like Fallible Ideas and you search Fountainhead, and some stuff is going to come out. Say 173 messages, and that's just from the last like 5 years. Some of these may not be very relevant, but some of them probably are. So, choosing topics, virtue of selfishness, the objectivist ethics, sins and anthem. Oh yeah, there's a big discussion about that comment from Rourke to Keating that it was like too late for him to be a painter near the end. Some people get like really offended by that, and they're like, no, why should we give up? Like, I think they take it personally, and they sort of feel like it's saying that it's too late for them, and like that they need to give up, and they hate that, and they're like, anyone can be saved. And I think they're taking the passage the wrong way. Anyways, there's a big discussion about that. Why do other characters hate Rourke? So there's a discussion. The impact of great fiction on the mind. There's another one. And this one continued. Reality focused versus second handers. This appears to be Atlas Shrugged related, but the word Fountainhead got in somewhere. Yeah, Rourke does enable Peter Keating. Like, he realizes that he he talks about it in the book before Courtland, that he had helped Peter and maybe shouldn't have in some ways, and then the Courtland thing also doesn't work out. So I think that's one of the themes of the book is you have to be careful about helping people. You cannot substitute your motor, your initiative for theirs. That's not going to work out well for either person. It's important to be sort of like picky with people and make sure that they're doing some things on their own. Like, you're not just leading them too much. Anyway, you can search for other things too if you're interested in specific topics like secondhand. Okay, there. Secondhand has some hits. Oh, there's a lot more with a hyphen. Oh, so there's one, Doraland. Can second-handedness be superficially apparent with certain goals and values? There's like a big discussion. Here's primacy of consciousness and second-handedness. So there is quite a lot of stuff to find. So you can search the archive or go to the Google group. And you can search the Google group as well. Oh, the Google group though, we switched from Yahoo to Google, so there's actually more stuff on the Yahoo group. But anyways, if you like search for Rourke, then 20 results came up. You can find the Yahoo group or previous groups as well. because there's the beginning of infinity group, like that has the same kind of discussion. Alright, I think I'll talk about this one and then end the stream. I guess there's supposed to be a period there. Or a question mark. These are a bit confused. Oh, by the way, if you like this discussion, I've done similar things before. This product has grammar stuff, but it also has a lot of textual analysis from a Fallible Ideas thread called Analyzing Lies, where I got a bunch of people to try to analyze lies in a couple short passages, and there was extensive discussion of 2 Facebook posts. There was only like 10 paragraphs worth of total material, and we wrote like 500 pages of discussion about it. And also I made these videos recently where I went over the thread a bit and talked about it more. There's also some other like somewhat similar things for textual analysis, including the reading hard passages one. It's just one little video. And I was gonna search for a Steven Pinker thing. Okay, here we go. This Dennis guy came along. He said he was really interested in FI. He hired me for some consulting. He wanted to learn about AI, and he thought that the AI community was bad, and that critical rationalism had better ideas that could help with AI. And he quit after a few months. Well, at first he like barely did anything for a few months, and then I pushed him to engage a bit more, and then he got mad about criticism and quit. But anyways, so he read this book, Possible Minds. It is a collection of like prominent intellectuals, like famous people like Steven Pinker. They each do like one article and it's related to AI in some way. And David Deutsch did an article as well. And I looked through the first like half of them, and they were all terrible. Like I often only read like 2 paragraphs because I would just stop reading after the first major mistake. Anyways, Dennis thought that Steven Pinker's article was good, and he wanted like an example showing how this stuff is bad. So I analyzed the first paragraph of, I think it was 1 paragraph of Steven Pinker's article, and it's this much analysis, and I'm gonna get the link. So this is a similar kind of activity where I just took 1 paragraph from a major intellectual and showed how it was utter shit. Dennis's response to this was to literally say nothing whatsoever. He did not say if he agreed or disagreed or if he learned his lesson or anything else. And I had to ask him on instant messages privately later what he thought of it because he hadn't replied. And then he said roughly he liked it, he agreed with it, he thought he learned it and would be better able to see such things in the future. He did not, however, practice what he thought he had just learned by, say, taking any other paragraph in the book and then doing a similar analysis. He didn't try to do that. So I think he never learned it. Yeah, so I don't know how well the link will take you to the right post, but if you search for this text, Possible Minds, starting at the start, that is where my analysis is. And if you don't like reading it like this, like it's kind of ugly and hard to see the quotes, what you do is you put it into any markdown editor and it will get more readable. So I still use light paper. It's old and it actually crashes now and you probably shouldn't use it, but I haven't bothered to get a better one because well, a lot of the time I use Ulysses, which is pretty good, but it's more heavyweight, so for a lightweight one I sometimes use this. Anyways, if you put it into a markdown, oh, this is actually not very visible, but if I go to the preview, we will now have quote coloring. Like the quotes are very visible, so it's more readable. So with any of the emails, if you're reading them in like a shitty format, putting them into a markdown program often will make them easier to read. Okay, so right, this one is like awkward. The other one had like a lot of stuff I had comments on. This one's kind of vague and annoying, I think. By the way, it's terrible that YouTube comments have the like 200 character limit that's so short. Okay. We'll just go one at a time. How will we know when objectivism is surpassed or improved? Well, you need an epistemology. So you can have the objectivist epistemology, let's say, and then that epistemology guides you for how do you think, how do you judge ideas. So then you will use that epistemology to judge the new idea, and then you will see if it's good or not. That's like the short answer, is it teaches you how to think, use that thinking skill to judge new ideas and see if they're better or if they improve on something. The way that you replace systems in general, well, one of the ways is one part at a time. So if you're questioning any part of objectivism other than the epistemology, you just use the objectivist epistemology to give you the guidance, the rules, whatever, to know how to do that. So in general, as long as you're only questioning like a couple things at a time, you still have the whole rest of the system to give you guidance. So it can help guide you on determining what's an improvement, what works, etc. Like you don't lose your system just because you're questioning some parts of it. Now, what if you want to? It gets tricky if you want to replace like the whole system at once. You're like, okay, I have this rival philosophy, totally different than objectivism. Is it better or worse? It disagrees with objectivism about certain key issues, like how to judge ideas, or like what truth is, or something. So it's like fundamentally incompatible. If you run into one of those, it can be like trickier in certain ways. But one of the good things for how to deal with that is you look at each system and you see which one addresses the other. Often like one of them explains why the other system is bad, but not vice versa. Like one more directly engages with the other and tells you what's wrong with it. And that is not just based on like which came first, because like there are plenty of things that try to criticize objectivism that were made like after Rand died, but then some of Rand's fans or followers or whatever criticized them. and then didn't get answered. So the state of the debate can often be objectivism got the last word and the other side had no further answers, stopped answering questions, stopped answering criticism, etc. That's the state of the debate is a common way I look at things, is try to understand like which arguments have been answered by which arguments, and then like what arguments have not been answered, and then like who is retreating from discussion or refusing to answer further comments, criticism, questions, etc. Oh, this particular passage I would say is a bad sign about someone. I do not like it. The other one was also a bad sign. Okay, so the other thing is, if you want to improve on objectivism, what you really need to do is you need to come up with new ideas that both explain like why they're good, what the point of them is, what problems with objectivism they're solving, like what were the weaknesses of objectivism, what are your criticisms of objectivism, and how does this new system do better and solve those problems. And it needs to address like objectivism arguments and questions and whatever. So it's like you need to explain it in a way that an objectivist would see that it was better, like that it would satisfy his concerns. Oh, I just said like if someone wrote that passage, either of the passages, it's a bad sign about that person. Like there are some questions where I'm like, that's a good question, that's interesting, but this is like a bad question. It's not what you say when you're making progress. Unless you're like very early stages and you're just really confused, and like maybe you just say your confusions at the beginning and you have to start somewhere. But like there are a fair amount of people who are better than this passage, I think, in regards to the issues being covered here. Like you can find people who already have better opinions than this. Anyways, yeah, so to really improve on something, like you need to show that you understand it. So like you're like, I have a better system than objectivism. You should be able to explain objectivism. You can start anywhere, but if someone thinks like this, then like they don't have a head start. Let's put it that way. At least for this thing, that they're not like some people would already be ahead of this when they started. Anyways, you should show that you understand objectivism, you see the point of it, you see like how it's intended to work. Then you point out like some flaw in it that shows like preferably a flaw on its own terms, like how it's ineffective for its own goals or something like that. Like that kind of criticism is usually the best and it's usually available. The reason it's good is because it matters to the person you're criticizing. Like it matters in terms of their own value system, because it's harder to do a criticism where you have to say like tell them to change to a different value system or a different epistemology first, and then they'll see the point of the criticism. You can make a criticism that like fits into their existing thinking. That's better as a way to start. So you have to sort of show mastery of objectivism and then also like some ways of making it better. Like you show you understand it, but also you see this problem it doesn't address, and then also you have a solution, and then you're improving on objectivism. And it should be in a way that like an honest, reasonable objectivist could like see the point of and agree with or like or whatever. Because you're like most people who try to criticize objectivism and like quote improve it or just, present an idea they think is better, usually they're ignoring most of the content and value of objectivism. Like they'll propose a political idea that's like anti-freedom, and they'll be like, well, this is better than objectivism. We should have socialized medicine. It's better than objectivism because then poor people won't be starving on the streets. Like, that is not how you improve on objectivism. That's not addressing objectivism's views on freedom and free trade and so on. So if you actually want to improve on objectivism, you need to like be aware of those things and then like do even better than them instead of just ignoring a bunch of the content and having no alternatives. And so you should be in a position where you actually have answers to objectivists' concerns and questions if you've actually improved on it instead of just having something different that's sort of talking past them. Anyway, this question is okay. It was the other ones I didn't like so much, I think. There's something about like the tone of it. I don't know. It looks bad to me. Anyways, how we know what it would. Yeah, this is like, where is this coming from? Like, is he saying that he wants to reach like the final truth and just be done thinking? Is that what he wants? Like a static certainty? Be a zombie who is omniscient, knows everything there is to know, and he's done thinking? That's like so anti both objectivism and critical rationalism, and it's so anti just like common sense and reason and stuff. Like, it, who wants that? Like, you don't have to be an objectivist or a critical rationalist to have a better attitude than that. How can we know infinity if we reach it? It's like, it's really confused. Like, I don't think he knows what infinity means in a precise way. I don't think he's using it very like seriously or exactly. Okay. Um right, that's compatible. It being a reference to Didi's book is compatible with it being a fuzzy concept in his mind. Because like, you don't reach infinity. Didi says we're always at the beginning of infinity because any finite number is like infinitely away from infinity. Like, any finite number is like infinitely closer to zero. Okay, if we're just talking about positive numbers, you can pick a number as large as you want. It's like infinitely closer to zero than to infinity. Like, you're 0% of the way to infinity, even when you're at a trillion or a trillion trillion or a trillion 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 or whatever you want. Like, you don't get closer to infinity. So you do not reach infinity. That's not a thing that makes sense. And the critical rationalist perspective is like a never-ending quest for improved knowledge. There's no limit to what we can learn. We don't get stuck. The idea of reaching the end of learning means you couldn't improve things further. There's no more progress. Things cannot be better. There's just like, that sucks. Unless you imagine that's like utopia or heaven or something, and you're like, I don't mind that nothing can be improved further because everything's perfect, which it's such an unrealistic way to look at life or the world or whatever. Yeah, I think he doesn't like this constant never-ending pursuit. Like, it's like some of the villains in Rand's books who are like, they want to rest. They want to like stop doing things, and like, why do you always have to be striving and stuff? Like, they don't like that. They want to stop striving and relax. Like, Rourke and Keating talk about that. They don't want to be heroic and try hard and so on. They just want to like muddle through life and do things that are good enough and not worry about it too much. Like, they don't want a cause to pursue. They certainly don't want to be putting like unlimited energy into a cause that's like a bottomless pit of you could always do more. Like, they want to just be satisfied and not feel guilty that they aren't doing more. So this is Popper translating Xenophanes, a pre-Socratic philosopher. But as for certain truth, no man has known it, nor will he know it, neither of the gods, nor yet of all the things of which I speak. And even if by chance he were to utter the perfect truth, he would himself not know it, for all is but a woven web of guesses. Even if you said something that was the truth, that was like absolutely the perfect final truth that could never be improved, there's no way to know that. Like, there's no way to prove it. All you can ever know is we've found no errors with it. It has survived all our error correction. It's the best we can come up with. We don't see anything wrong with it. That's the best knowledge gets to, which is not a bad thing. There's nothing wrong with that. It works. Like, all the power of science, all the effectiveness of our technology is built on that. Like, it is good enough for cell phones and computers and whatever, cars, planes. It's good enough to go to the moon. People want certainty so they can like close the book on things. So it's like beyond question. And it never has to be thought about again. Like, they know the answer, it's done. That's a lot of how school is. It's like they learned it, they answer on the test, that's the answer, there's nothing more to think about. And that is not a good attitude if you want to learn things and know more. And there's also like Francisco tells James that words have an exact meaning. And this guy is not using words in an exact way when he says this. Like, he's just sort of rambling. It's like Peikoff, I think, might say this is not a sentence. Like, he thinks it's not like a clear, proper idea. Like, he thinks run-on sentences are not sentences because you don't have a well-formed sentence. Like, he starts saying one thing, so like, I don't know, maybe there's some formatting missing and there should be like a period here. Anyway, it's a weird question though. If truth can never be obtained, why do we need to know what truth looks like if we can't get it? Like, what for? What we need to know is what knowledge looks like because that's what we can get. That's the thing we actually have access to and we deal with. The word truth is ambiguous. Like, I don't really have a problem saying like we've found some truth or like, we've learned about the truth or we're seeking the truth and making progress on that. Those are all fine. But if you use the word truth as a synonym for omniscience, infallibility, ideas that could never be improved, static certainty, you mean that, the final truth or a divine truth. If that's what you mean, then sure, we can't obtain that. We can only have things like scientific knowledge. So what we should focus on is how do we find scientific knowledge? What does that look like? How do we obtain that? Or philosophical knowledge or whatever. And how do we improve it? And how do we make ongoing progress? How do we make things better and then better again and then better again? How do we have a process of ongoing improvement, as Goldratt calls it? But he's just sort of like, if truth can never be obtained, how do we get it anyways by seeing what it looks like and reaching infinity? Like, he's sort of admitting we can't get the infallible truth, but at the same time, he still wants it and he's still seeking it, rather than actually acknowledging and accepting we don't have infallible truth. So how do we look for fallible truth? What can we do with that? How can we obtain that? How can we evaluate it, etc.? He won't switch over to, all right, fallible truth is all we have. What can we do with that? How do we work with it? And then this sort of switches ideas. If it's a constant, never-ending pursuit, how can we know infinity if we reach it? If it's a constant, never-ending pursuit, it doesn't end. We don't reach it. Like, this doesn't make sense. If it's never-ending, we don't get to the end. We don't know we're at the end because we're never there. His question is sort of, if we never reach the end, how can we identify the end point? The answer is you don't. That doesn't make sense. You don't know what you're talking about. It's hard to talk to people like this because even if you can ask them questions, just based on reading this passage, I would predict it would be hard to get straight answers out of them. Like the ways this is not clear, I don't think those are accidents that would then get cleared up if you said, oh, it's not clear in this way, could you clarify? It's not clear in this way, could you clarify? Like the person might try to clarify a few times, but my expectation is after you ask enough questions and try to get more and more details and get them to actually flesh out their viewpoint and make it coherent and write it all out and so on and so forth, they would just stop and say you're being picky and you're splitting hairs, and they don't want to do that. Like the kind of person who writes like this, like doesn't want to write better, is the standard thing going. They don't want to more clearly put into words what they actually mean in full detail. They will find that if you like ask enough questions and they were trying to actually answer them and write down answers over and over, if they let you like keep questioning them, and they would call it grilling them, they would get caught in contradictions, or they would find their views led to bad values that are widely accepted as bad, including by them, and they don't want to accept it. They'd run into problems like that, and then they'd have to do critical thinking and truth-seeking and so on to try to fix the flaws in their philosophy. Like they'd actually just be doing rational, objective philosophy if they were willing to clarify what they're saying in enough detail and respond to questions and such. But that's like the very thing they don't want to do and they're shying away from. Anyway, I liked this quote because Francisco is suggesting that making money is different than getting money. That James gets money by graft, but graft does not make money. It's not creating money. It's not wealth creation. It's just transferring money from someone to someone else. It's more like robbery than like making money. Like the word made or make has an exact meaning. It doesn't mean get. It's a different word. There's a lot of stuff in Alice Shrugged like this that's missable. Like I can imagine someone reading this and missing it and not really getting it and just thinking that Francisco was sort of taunting him and saying, I'm smarter than you, I think more precisely than you, I'm higher status than you. Like you could take it that way. Or you could just not get it and keep reading. A lot of people just, they don't fully understand what they read and then they just keep going and they don't stop and think about it much. I don't know like how many people actually get it of the people who read it. I mean, it sold like millions of copies, and I think most of them would not get the scene quite right if you actually asked them, and with no hints, like made them try to explain it properly. Most people like avoid that kind of thing. Like they don't want to be grilled. They don't want to be backed into a corner or put in a position where they're actually trying to defend themselves and explain things and exposing themselves to potential ridicule and being outed as dumb or that kind of thing. Like they avoid scenarios where they're open to criticism. They don't want to stick their neck out. So it makes it harder to discover how well they understand things. But when I find like actual information about what people understand, it's often pretty disappointing. So I fear a lot of people like read this scene and don't really get the point that like if you ask them, when Francisco said that words have an exact meaning, like which word is it that he thought had an exact meaning that James did not understand? If you ask them like that question, I think a lot of people would not know the answer. And also would not have realized there was something they didn't understand there. Which is interesting because like that question is basically, what did Francisco mean by his statement? Like, if you can't answer that question, you don't understand what Francisco was saying, like you didn't get it. It's pretty straightforwardly just asking about what Francisco just said. And a lot of people just would not ask themselves that question of like which specific word is it that has an exact meaning, word or words. Like it happens to be the one main word, but it could have been multiple words. But you should know like which words is he referring to. Like he's not just saying this as a general concept. Like there's an actual reference, or you know, there's some point to it. A lot of people just take it as mockery, which it partly is, but it's partly like he's actually dealing with issues in a good way. Like James was being silly. It's hard to deal with people who are this imprecise. Because correcting them normally doesn't work very well, partly because they're like imprecise about the corrections. Like you try to correct them and then they just read what you said imprecisely and sort of like ruin it. Like if they're just not thinking at a certain level of detail, it's hard to say anything so that they will start thinking at that level of detail. Alright, well, I'm gonna end the stream. I'm still busy some, but it is trending down now. So I should be streaming more frequently again. Or at least doing other stuff like writing emails or something. I will get these unread counts back down to 0. There's a variety of reasons. Like I've made a lot of videos. And streams are similar, except okay, one thing that happened is new people joined. There's Alex here and Kyle and the Crit Rat guy who joined recently. So there's some new people, and I guess Wayne Agony. I don't know when he showed up or where he came from. But so there was a bit of new people with some questions because some of the veteran people like really don't have many questions they want to ask for some reason. So the streams have worked well in terms of actually getting some viewers and some questions, who you will note are primarily not the people who participate in the email group and have been there for years. And then another thing is I figured out how to stream better. Like I set up OBS on Mac, which I'd never done before, and I found out how to swap monitors. So you can go to the arrangement preferences, and if you drag this little bar, the bar switches your main monitor, and it moves all of my windows onto my side screen when I drag that bar over. So that I get like good privacy, and then I can just drag things on that I know are things I can show. So one of the downsides of making videos, the way I was doing it before, is I'd have a second space with privacy. So it's like this, and then I just drag a few things in it, and then I make the video. Like while I'm making the video, I don't read my IMs, I don't check my emails, etc. So I figured out, yeah, if I put all my stuff on the side screen, then it's not disruptive. I can just do whatever I want. Also, streams have lower expectations in terms of like pauses and breaks and silences and stuff. Like normally when I make a video, I'll run like silence removal software, and I'll try to like focus on the video. With streaming, it's a lot easier to just like go do something else or take a break in the middle, and it's not a big deal because streams are more like chill and spread out over time. I did end up talking pretty constantly for this stream, but like it's okay if a stream is less busy than this. So I like that. I've watched streams for a long time. I've streamed before, like on Twitch. I've streamed games and I've talked and stuff. And then another reason I did it is I had some ideas for things to stream. Like in particular, for several months, I was writing like 1,000 to 2,000 words a day, and I figured I would just stream writing it, and then if people wanted to talk, they could, and if they didn't, I would just stream the writing I was going to do anyways, and while I'm at it, you know, stream a few email replies, like I've often made videos of anyways, and you know, check Twitter or whatever. So I have like a few things to do, and then it's not a big deal, and then people can ask questions. So I started doing that, and it was working pretty well. I plan to do more. It's similar enough to things I've done before, like making videos, that like I understand it pretty well. Like I haven't done a lot of philosophy live streams before, but I know how to do this kind of thing well enough that it's not really like new territory, even though it's a little bit different. I'm fairly confident that I will keep doing more of these and enjoy them, and it should work pretty well. I have a lot of books open. I use TextEdit for basically text searching books only, just to find quotes. And I keep a lot of like Popper and Rand books open because I quote from them frequently. That's one of the things I don't like about the objectivist community in general, by the way, that I've noticed, is that people do not quote Rand enough. Like, they should just literally quote passages of things she said more often and relate them to the discussions they're having, and like let Rand speak for them for some of their points, or like let Rand like echo them or say parallel things or whatever. Just like integrate Rand quotes more into what they say. Also, it's not just quotes, it's like also, you know, her arguments and reasoning and stuff. Like they could more directly like say like Rand said this very specific thing and I think it applies here, rather than just very vaguely saying I think that my position is objectivist and it's because it's pro reason and it involves objective reality, and it's like that's not really engaging with the details of Rand's thinking. So I like exact quotes, or if not that, like fairly direct statements of specific things she actually said. Yeah, so thanks for the questions. Questions are good. The passages were good to analyze, especially I like the first one. Bye.